Hello and welcome to That's Just Wild with me, Steve Backshall.
And me, Lizzie Daly.
And me, Sarah Roberts.
The podcast all about nature, wildlife, and how I once took an unconscious swan to the vet in my car, only to have it wake up on the M4.
I've so many questions.
How did that end? I need the end of that story.
Oh, so badly. Very nearly in a 10-car pile-up on the motorway.
Oh,
So
my
we were
gosh.
by Marlow Bridge, my best mate and I. We'd just been doing a paddle, and we saw a fully grown male cob swan drowning a younger swan. And I jumped in like a superhero with my cape on and separated them, only to suddenly realise I had this one almost drowned swan in the water, and I had to do something with it. So I picked it up, put it under my arm, and my best mate and I, we drove off down the road.
This is brilliant.
And then it woke up. It woke up and the wings are going everywhere in the
my
car as
God.
we're driving to Swan Rescue in Windsor. And it was very nearly really, really bad. We only just managed to get there in time.
Stop.
Imagine that swan, though. Like, what must she be
know.
thinking? She's like out of the frying pan into the fire, literally thinking, oh my God, I'm going back for lunch.
And also imagine the news report had I actually caused a pile-up.
Was this recently? How long ago was this?
Oh, this is quite a while back. This is probably 10, 15 years ago.
Still in your heyday, though.
But oh my gosh.
This male swan going back to the river like, mate, you're not going to believe it. Steve Backshall just kidnapped me. Right, before we get started, we've noticed there's been a fair amount of new listeners recently, which is amazing. So we'd like to reintroduce ourselves to you all. So hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm a wildlife biologist, filmmaker and presenter. You may have seen me on a number of BBC series, films, or if you're in the US, on National Geographic at the moment with my new series. And I also tell stories such as when I got my regulator and mask ripped off my face at the same time by a stellar sea lion.
That sounds fun.
Nice. Was that up north in Alaska, British Columbia, somewhere like that?
In Alaska, yeah. It was one of those encounters where you have more stellar sea lions than you have air and space and anything else. And so obviously they explore with their mouths. And I had a camera in one hand, and you kind of just have to just give up while they all come down and explore you and bite your head and pull mask. And there was this moment where one just caught the strap of my mask, ripped it off, and then another at the same time just got my regulator and yanked it out. And suddenly I was like, okay, I'm at one with the sea now.
So I'm Sarah. I'm an environmental journalist with a background in guiding, field research, mostly work with big predators. But you may have seen me on the Netflix series All the Sharks, where my dive buddy and I had to flag down a fishing boat to save us after we accidentally scuba dived in an underwater tornado and got swept out to sea. So for those of you that know your marine worlds, that's a vortex current.
So what you've left out is slug licker, toad snorter, and mezcal drinker. Basically someone who experiments with anything that could cause you to hallucinate in nature.
Steve, that's an opening for you and your experiments when it comes to venom,
True,
hypothermia.
guilty as charged.
Love.
My name's Steve Backshall, and I still very much present Deadly 60 now. In fact, the new series is going to be out on iPlayer very soon. I also have the new Deadly 60 book, which is coming out. It's the best one I've ever done.
Hey.
And get this, Deadly Live, the arena tour, which is coming to the UK in October and is going to be taking me places like the Manchester Arena and the O2. So you both better clear your calendars because you absolutely have to be there.
I was going to say, do we get front row seats?
If you want to be turbo splattered with dino poo, then front row seats are absolutely for you guys.
Just quickly, Steve, on the Deadly 60, so Deadly 60, obviously top 60 deadliest animals around the world. Do you know what number you're actually on? I've always wanted to know that.
No idea. When we came up with it, it was kind of, right, well, we're going to do 20 programs, 3 animals in each. So there you go, 60, bosh. And by the time we were at series like 7 or 8, we're kind of going, I don't think anyone's noticed. Just carry on. It'll be fine. Okay, so for today's episode, we are talking about mysterious animals. Ooh.
Da-na-na-na-na.
So, mysterious animals. There's so many different ways we can go with this, but the mysterious, I'd argue, drives all of us, right? Whether we're in science, storytelling, young naturalist, whatever it may be. But I want to start actually way before that, because a lot of our stories are framed around myth and legend in the natural world and in the animal kingdom. And I know there's still a lot of hotly debated and up for grabs myths and legend and mysteries about animals that either are, not extinct, are out there and have never been observed or filmed. There's so much we still don't know. So where should we start when it comes to the myth and the legend?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there's a lot of things that once would have been considered to be outlandish legend that actually came to fruition and came to be seen as being true. Today we have this whole pseudoscience called cryptozoology, which focuses on the things that are supposed to be fantasy, but a lot of people actually really believe are out there. Things like Nessie and Yeti. And have you heard of the chupacabra?
Oh, I have actually.
Yeah, so chupacabra is a legend from the New World, from the Americas, and it's of a mysterious reptilian-looking animal, which is said to, well, it's sometimes called the goat sucker because it's said to creep into herds of goats and basically suck the milk from their teats. And there's been one delightful idea that the whole thing about the chupacabra comes from a dog with mange. So someone just saw a dog, a
Oh.
really sad, sorry-looking dog that had lost all its hair because of mange, and they went chupacabra, and it's been out there ever since.
God.
But a lot of these stories stem from these kind of relationships that we have with wildlife, right? If you go into communities, I know, Sarah, you've talked about this before, but in places like the Amazon, with their relationship with species like the pink Amazon river dolphin, there's
Oh,
myth and
yeah.
legend
The
around
sexy dolphin man.
the sexy dolphin man, and there's
Yeah.
overlap in these stories between what's real and what's not. And they're kind of, I guess, to us a little bit odd and unfathomable, if you like, but it's steeped in history across the world. Wherever you go, somebody's got a story about, a Nessie or a Yeti of some kind.
Yeah, and a lot of those in the past actually ended up having some degree of truth in them.
Mm.
So, for example, way back, if you look at old maps of Southeast Asia, then across the area of what is now known as Indonesia, there would be inscribed on the sea, "Here be dragons." And it wasn't until 1910 that someone from the outside world first went to Komodo Island and found that there genuinely were dragons there. The whole idea of the gorilla in East and West Africa was considered to be a totally ridiculous idea until 1847, when the first explorer from Europe went there and went, "Oh no, they totally are gorillas. They're a real thing." And in New Guinea, where I've done a lot of work, there was a long-held mythical creature that lived in the trees called dingiso. And in 1994, the amazing Australian biologist Tim Flannery went there and found that it was an as yet undescribed kind of tree kangaroo. So a lot of these kind of mysterious ideas actually ended up being true. And surely the one that had the greatest, most potent impact in literature and in storytelling and in people's imaginations was the Kraken.
Oh, yeah, of course. Just quickly on New Guinea, because we've read about these myths and legends, but even now, even today, kind of going the other side, is we are discovering brand new species. So I don't know if you saw the article that came out literally this year of Fred Krause that went to Papua New Guinea, and he discovered a brand new species of tree snake.
No.
It's been named the coal black tree snake. This year, it's not small. It's, 4 feet long. And he observed it in Papua New Guinea on this small island, wrapped around a goshawk, and it's just been identified as a brand new species. So I don't know, that there's lots in it. There's lots in, I guess, the mysteries of what we don't know. But I think it's really exciting to think that we can still discover, things like that even today, even now. And my next mission is absolutely to find the Kraken of all Krakens, because I'm obsessed with all things giant squid. How can you not be?
In that area of the world, the Indonesia, Australia area of the world, have you guys ever heard of the Wallace Line?
Yeah, of course.
So I hadn't heard of that until more recently. But that's another one of those mysteries that with a bit of science and a bit more time we were able to answer. But for anyone that doesn't know, the Wallace Line was Alfred Russel Wallace, the 19th century natural historian, basically.
Be very, very careful. You are
Legend.
talking about my absolute hero, like my number one hero ever in natural history. So be very careful what you say.
Okay.
It's like the Ariana Grande of today, sir.
Okay, he was a real cool guy and he liked to explore. Yeah, and he spent a bit of time in the southern equator and he noticed that there was a huge shift between the animals in Australasia, sort of Australia, that area, and then the ones on the other side of Indonesia, which was weird because they weren't separated by that much water. So, for example, in the west side, you have your tigers, your elephants, your water buffalo, your orangutans, and then on the other side, you've got none of that. You've got echidna and you've got kangaroos and no tigers, and yet there seems like they should have been able to, at some point in all of history and evolution, cross over. And so for a long time, that was just this boundary that he'd drawn through the sea, wasn't it, Steve? That he had observed, clever guy, and pointed out, and no one could really explain it. But now we know, because we've been able to study our oceans a little bit more, that it's actually a really deep trench that goes through that area. So we believe that even when there were ice ages, those areas of land would never have connected. There would still always have been deep enough sea to stop any animals from passing between, or any of our big land mammals anyway.
Yeah. So Indonesia's my kind of my heartland. That's where I had my first job and, wrote my first books. And it is where the Wallace's Line comes really neatly down between the islands. In some places, particularly famously between Bali and Lombok, you could pretty much swim between those two islands. You can see them super clearly from one to the other. It's a very short boat ride in between them. And yet they have never been joined. They've never been joined in history. And as the oceanic crusts have moved, they come closer and closer and closer together. But in the past, they were so far apart. And that's why you get the Australasian fauna on one side and the Asian fauna to the other. It's utterly incredible. And that it still remains, even now, today, it is mind-blowing. But even more so that back in the 1800s, Alfred Russel Wallace, who was, describing tens of thousands of new species and wandering through places that even today can be quite wild, making so many discoveries, but also having these huge ideas and huge discoveries. He was one of those people, along with Darwin, who has just completely changed how we perceive the world, and one of those unique human beings that can change everything with a kind of curious spirit and a giant creative brain.
Just like I said, real cool guy.
Real
Real
guy.
cool
I would
guy.
also say, if anyone out there wants to read one single book from that period of time, the Malay Archipelago, even now today, remains one of the greatest adventure books in history. It's still so exciting to read. And I would recommend anyone out there who has an interest in this topic, get stuck into the Malay Archipelago. It's really quite something.
I'll add it to the list.
So obviously, when it comes to mysterious and mystery, our deep seas and our oceans have to be the top of the list, right? How many times have we heard we know more about space and stars than we do about our deep seas? And we've already mentioned the Kraken and the giant squid, but they have to be the king, the queen, whatever you want to label it as, the icon of the mysterious species. I just want to share with you some of the expeditions that have tried to go out and document more about these giant squid, because there's huge gaps in our understanding of their basic lifespan. We don't know how long they live for, whether they socialize, how they move up and down water columns, where they go. So key expeditions that have happened, there's and I'll try not to butcher these names, but the Kubadera expedition that happened in Japan in 2004. That was the first ever kind of live giant squid photography that happened at around 900 meters in depth. They used baited lines and they had cameras attached to them. They had over 500 images. Bosh, giant squid documented. 2 years later, The NHK and Discovery Channel went on an expedition in 2006, and this time they documented, again in Japan, recorded in the Ogasawara Islands, had the first video footage of live giant squid, brought to the surface though, so not natural behaviour. 6 years later, in 2012, again, they got the first video footage of giant squid, but this time in that kind of deep sea environment. They were around 630 meters of depth. Very, very cool expedition. And then in 2019, with Ocean X, there's a first footage of giant squid in US waters, so the Gulf of Mexico, at around 750 to 800 meters depth. There's been lots of other attempts, but apart from that, that is really all we've got in terms of footage and an understanding of these animals in their natural environment. Most of the information that we're gathering on giant squid come from their predators, which are, of course, sperm whales. Deep sea hunters that we think eat a lot of giant squid. We're not entirely sure, but scientists are using washed up and carcasses of sperm whales to find the beaks of these giant squid to try and understand how often they're eating them, understand population estimates of them. I mean, it's literally like a Disney film, guys, that we still know so little about. Such a giant, the largest invertebrate on our planet.
I filmed last year with one of the scientists who got those first moving images of
Stop.
giant squid. And it's an incredible way that they managed to do it. So it's done using ROVs. Effectively, what they do is they sink down kind of like a trail cam. So it's a camera that is constantly recording, and they have in front of it this lure, which is a circular flashing light that is making something that's very, very similar to the bioluminescence of a certain kind of jellyfish that scientists believe that giant squid feed on. And the image itself is just phenomenal. It only lasts for about 6 seconds, and yet it, changed our perception of this incredible, iconic creature.
Cool.
And what you see is what looks like a snake coming in from one side of the camera out of the darkness. And then this snake, which is a one single continuous long tendril, opens up like a flower as all of the arms and tentacles of the giant squid come in to investigate this lure. It very, very quickly has a bit of an investigation, then clearly finds that it doesn't have the same tactile sensation as a real jellyfish. Then it calls and swims off again. And it is
Cool.
so mysterious. It is the epitome of what we're talking about right now. And, the fact that this creature that was first discovered in the 1800s, that it lives so potently in our imaginations, has only been glimpsed for those few seconds alive and swimming down where it does all its hunting. That is one of the most exciting things in natural history, surely.
Could we have them off the coast of the UK then? If we don't really know,
Yeah.
we've not really looked for them.
How deep are our waters?
Well, to the east, we're not deep enough. So the North Sea is nothing like deep enough. We head far enough to the west,
Off
and
island.
you'll drop off to below 1,000 meters and into giant squid territory, and they're definitely found in the North Atlantic. So yes.
Wow.
Come on. Why are we not? Sorry to make this about funding and politics, but why are we not investing all of our money into this
Just to
alone?
find giant squid.
Yeah. No,
For
totally.
real? Like, what are we
I'm
doing?
with you. Well, there is a lot of money being invested. So I work with a wonderful organisation called Necton, an ocean census. And we are, over the course of 10 years, out searching to find at least 10,000 new species. And there is a lot of money and a lot of effort being put into finding these weird and wonderful creatures. And one thing that was discovered this year, which is utterly unbelievable, is the first footage at depth of a colossal squid.
What?
So the colossal squid, which
Beautiful.
is a close cousin of the giant squid, found in the Southern Ocean.
How much bigger?
Well, so they're probably not longer, but they are significantly heavier. So they can get up to be about half a ton in weight. The other thing that really sets them apart is that within the sucker cups on their arms and tentacles, they have a giant hook that they use to latch into really significant, sizable prey. But in March of this year, 100 years after the discovery of the colossal squid and the knowledge that it exists, Ocean Census and the Schmidt Ocean Expedition filmed for the first time at depth a colossal squid. But get this, It was a baby. It was a juvenile colossal
Oh,
squid.
stop.
And they got these live real-time images. And the biologists were all going absolutely bonkers at having found a new species. And then someone went, no, it's even better than that. That's a baby colossal squid. Can you imagine the excitement?
Don't. I want to be on one of these expeditions, guys. What am I doing with my life?
So we're talking about different kinds of new squid being described at depth for the very first time and very, very recently. The colossal squid, March 2025. At the end of last year, December 2024, the Nat Geo Perpetual Planet expedition found for the first time another kind of giant squid, not quite as big. This one was about 1 meter in length, but had the most phenomenal array of colours and light patterns all over it. This was called Gonatus antarcticus, and it was down in the Southern Ocean. And, pretty much new discoveries of that scale and scope are being found all the time. The mysteries of our deep seas are seemingly infinite.
I just want to share with you a very quick story about how I had this humbling experience with a deep sea animal. It was in the Bay of Biscay. It was a few years ago. I found myself on the Brittany ferries from Plymouth to Santander. I was there with Orca. They're a charity that essentially piggyback off already going ferry rides and journeys across the UK and beyond to do cetacean surveys. So they'll go up on top deck and they'll count how many whales and dolphins they see. It's really cool. So they were like, come along, do the Bay of Biscay. For anyone who doesn't know, the Bay of Biscay is this stretch of water that runs along the west side of France down to the north coast of Spain. And what's awesome about this stretch of water is it's quite treacherous. It's got deep canyons that go down to like 4,500 meters, even more. And this brings in a range of whale and dolphin species. In fact, a third of the world's cetaceans can be found in the Bay of Biscay, which is like a mind-blowing stat for something that's so close to here in the UK. Anyway, so I was sat in the canteen of a Brittany Ferries, and for anyone who isn't from the UK, there's nothing more humbling and British than just eating peas and mash in a canteen going over to Spain on a ferry. Anyway, there I was, minding my own business. And out of the canteen window, at the surface, I see this pinky grey blob. And it was a blinking Cuvier's beaked whale.
No way.
Now, for anyone who doesn't know, they're one of our most deepest diving marine mammals. They can dive down to like 3,000 meters. They come up to the surface for short periods of time to breathe before doing dives of multiple hours, 2-3 hours. And I couldn't believe my eyes when I was like seeing this incredibly elusive, rarely seen species just out of the window on this ferry trip. Bonkers.
Did you know what it was straight away?
I did, but only because I was on like whale alert. So we'd seen pilot whales and we were looking out for fin whales and we'd seen so many dolphins that I was already on like cetacean alert, And I think it's the pinky greyness of the body and the stubby face, which made me go, that's not a dolphin that I've seen and that's not a pilot whale. That is absolutely a beaked whale. Panicked, threw sandwiches up on the top deck. It was awesome and gone before I could even, show anyone else. So it's probably just one of those things that no one's going to believe, but
That
it
is
happened.
quite something. We believe you. We believe you,
Thanks,
Lizzie.
guys.
Thousands
Thanks,
wouldn't.
guys.
They're famously difficult to kind of get back to species, the beaked whales. There's a surprisingly large amount of them. And, we've filmed them quite a few times before, and just trying to figure out what it is pretty tricky. I have talked before on the podcast about the fact that there is one kind of beaked whale that has never been seen alive, that we know it's out there in our oceans, but it's only been found from, dead species that have been washed ashore. And like you say, this incredible creature that is at the surface for such transitory periods of time and then dives down for a couple of hours. And Cuvier's beaked whale in the Guinness Book of Animal Records as being the deepest diving of all animals on the planet. And you saw one off a
That's
ferry.
bonkers. Honestly, it's the
That
best
rocks.
sighting ever. Yeah.
For ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes, and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com.
I want to chime in here with a completely contrasting species that is not as majestic or as like appreciated as a whale, but is very, very humble, but doing something completely surprising. So I want to talk about the Yellowstone tiger beetle. So generally speaking, insects have no way of controlling their internal body temperature. So basically, whatever the temperature is in the atmosphere around them is going to be the same temperature as they have internally. So entomologists had their minds absolutely blown when they found these tiny little stripy beetles, which are the tiger beetles, thriving in the piping hot steam of the Yellowstone hot springs. So those hot springs that are over
Cool.
100 degrees Fahrenheit that have this crazy steam coming off them. And of course, it's also really, really acidic. Had a load of beetles just wandering around the side, just having a lovely time. Basically a spa day, thriving in that environment.
How?
Well, I mean, you guys know a lot about biology. How does bug biology work anyway?
Well, the first question that springs to my mind is that tiger beetles are predatory. They are very, very active predators that scamper around, noshing down other invertebrates. So for them to be there have to be other invertebrates around. There'd be no other reason for them to be in those hot springs unless there are other things for them to feed on. So that first element of it is completely wild. In terms of the proteins that are within them, the protein chitin that's within its exoskeleton is extraordinary and very, very good with heat. But all the internal proteins would be just as susceptible.
Yeah, you'd think they'd all be fried or denatured, basically, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but chitin itself is very, very good with heat. It's what is
Mm.
within that would be the problems and be the issues. I would have thought. This is amazing. This is a great
Yeah, 'cause
story.
well, they also like the way they breathe as well. The insects, they just tend to have a load of holes on their sides, don't they? The spiracles, the holes on the side. So that would let the steam, you would think, inside of them. So anyway, it was baffling, understandably, for the entomologists that found it, and so Montana State University had to study this, and they basically use electron microscopes to investigate these wet salts tiger beetles, and they found that they'd evolved a special feature in the abdomen which helped them to reflect heat.
What?
And they've also theorized as well that they might have heat shock proteins, which they need to study further, but could also provide really interesting breakthroughs for medicine for us as well.
Wow,
That's
that's
amazing.
bonkers.
I remember studying about heat shock proteins, chaperone proteins, aren't they? In academia, they have a way of chaperoning or transforming certain biological proteins so that they can still be used for their original intended use. Um, but to be able to do it in that kind of heat, I guess it must be very, very similar to what goes on at hydrothermal vents, right? Where
Mm.
animals are still going through their lives at the same sort of temperatures as that.
I guess what's the weird thing is those exact same species of beetle have also been sighted in other places around the park where it's not red hot, just like using the cold like puddles and lakes to cool themselves off in areas where it's not red hot.
So one of my favorite things is reading the news, which I don't do a lot, guys, by the way, because it's very depressing. But,
Your favorite
opening.
thing that you never do is reading the news.
I don't read the news ever. One of my favorite things, I should say, about the news is when you read this like scaremongering article and story of a mystery behavior or spectacle phenomena, and it happens every now and again. There's actually a few bits I want to talk about that I'm kind of reading in the news, if you like. But one BBC News article talked about why this town got covered in spider webs overnight. And if you look at the pictures, it's pretty extraordinary. I'm not going to go into too much detail because we've talked about one of my favorite behaviors in spiders before called ballooning. But this is exactly what happened. So there was a
Oh,
small
wow.
town.
I've just
Yeah.
seen the pictures, Lizzie. It is literally a blanket of spider webs. It's just like
Yeah.
huge meters and meters and meters of spider webs in a big blanket.
Exactly. And it literally is like draped over trees and signposts and houses. And it was an immediate kind of reaction to the heavy flooding that happened in Australia. So it was in Victoria, a small town called Traralgon. Sorry if you're from there. Totally butchered it. Anyway, millions of these spiders, which are obviously escaping the rising water. And by the way, this happens, regularly in small pulses. If you get things like flooding for ground-dwelling species, they go up, and for a lot of spiders that are able to kind of release this fine silk strand, it's just an easy way of getting away from flooded areas. So they all release the silk at the same time. And what's cool about this draping, as you say, Sarah, is that it's not one spider releasing lots of bits of silk. Every single spider, and I should say it was species such as the red and black amber Codamus species. They're not threatening to humans, but they all let out their own bit of silk. So what you're looking at is millions of spiders, millions of strands of silk, all ballooning together to create this huge veil over a town. And
That's
obviously
cool.
everyone was panicking and going, there's a spider plague and this is all an issue. But quite the opposite. I feel like it nods to actually how much life is there underground in this town.
I'm very, very glad that I let you carry on that story, because I was about to jump in at the beginning as soon as you started describing it, with my own big-headed interpretation of what that was, and it wasn't spiders.
Oh, go
Because
on.
we get this question every single year here in this country. I will be bombarded with photos and with people saying, it's like Halloween. All the bushes near me have just been covered in spiders' webs. Everything is covered in silk, and it looks incredibly
I know what
spooky.
this
And
is.
it's covered my bike. It's covered the car. It's covered the bushes, and it's not spiders. It's caterpillars. It's ermine
Yeah.
moth caterpillars, which they're highly photophobic, and that is scared of light. And they cover themselves and everything they're feeding on in these immense webs. They can stretch for enormous distances, and that's what it is. It's not spiders. If you're seeing this, look
Yeah.
up close, and you will see the teeny tiny caterpillars within that are wriggling inside. In this country, they are not harmful to us. They can do a lot of damage to plants, but they're not harmful to us. But you do sometimes get it with processionary moth caterpillars that do have urticating or stinging hairs. And that is much more of a problem. But I mean, in terms of our theme of mystery, anyone who wants to check this out, have a look at some photos of it. It is the most mysterious Halloween kind of looking phenomenon you're ever going to see.
Well, I was just thinking as Lizzie was saying that, though, how much this is just exposure therapy, isn't it? Right there on your doorstep if you're an
Get
arachnophobe.
in there. Climb into one of those little tents. Also, if you ever just watch the caterpillars build them, they're really cool. I would never encourage touching anything, but I have in my time touched a few of those little tents because their structure is incredible. And if you watch them, all the caterpillars are like windscreen wipers. Have you noticed that when they're like building the tents? It's really weird. I'm going to chuck in one more very short and random story, which I think can speak to, some of the stories, species, behaviors that we think we know a lot about. So there was a really cool publication that came out recently on chimpanzees. They'd collected camera trap footage of 4 populations of chimpanzees across West Africa. And they found that actually these chimpanzees were stoning specific trees. People will know from listening to previous episodes on our love for chimpanzees and all their behaviors. But we know that they have...
Apart from infanticide
I didn't want to mention it, but
Or
yeah.
killing children as well.
and genocide
Yeah.
and cannibalism.
Murder.
I mean, apart from those things,
Listen to the cruel episodes, all I'm going to say. But we know that they use stones as tools to crack open nuts and to feed. They're very much, intelligent, closely related to us. But this new behavior, scientists can't actually decide whether it's almost like performing a ritual or almost like creating a cairn. You know how we have cairns, these piles of rocks in Scotland, if you're going across and following a trail. Or if it's another way that chimpanzees are just trying to communicate. We know that they use big pant hoots and vocalizations when doing territorial displays, and males are, kind of establishing those territories. But there's this whole argument back and forth about whether it's a cultural thing or whether perhaps it is just, another kind of tool in their arsenal, if you like. I'm curious what you guys think.
Have you guys never played that game where you throw rocks and try and hit something? It's quite addictive. You can do it at the beach.
I mean, my 4-year-olds do it, and I
Hey, this
tell
is a
them off and tell
chimpanzee.
them not to do it because it's
Don't throw stones.
yeah.
What? You've never played? Oh, come on. It's just like the poor man's bowls.
Right, okay, I see. Well, I actually, I can afford actual balls.
Oh, Steve, you big brag.
I know.
All right, we all know Deadly 60 did pretty well, Steve, but you don't need to rub it in.
Arena Tour said, do I need to say any more? I can afford ball now. Well, listen, back to your question. I think that I have definitely witnessed ritual in chimpanzees, and ritual in a very similar way to how we as human beings practice ritual. That is a sequence of behaviors that do not necessarily have to have some particular outcome in terms of gaining food or attaining relationships or something, but appear to be purely for process. And I certainly saw that with chimpanzees excavating honey from nests. I've seen it in the way that you may perhaps have infant care, and certainly the collaborative grooming and things like that all feels very ritualized in chimpanzees. So I could totally buy that this is pure and simple, just a ritual, or just letting off steam, or letting off frustration. That's something that chimpanzees often do. You know, when they get really frustrated, they're a little bit like a crazed toddler, and they're just kind of like, what do I do? What do I do? I'm going to destroy something. So yeah, I could believe any of those things,
But you can't believe they're having a good game of bulls.
but they're probably not playing ball.
All right, okay. So I have been so excited to drop this story with you guys because I know that you both spent a lot of time with big cats. So I want your actual opinions, please. Now, I'm sure you've all heard about big cat sightings in the UK, and you're probably like me, where you've not really given it much credible thought to it. But there's been, thousands of sightings over the years and all sorts of theories about big cats that were maybe bought at Harrods in the 70s or came out of a zoo, or all different scenarios, but nothing particularly conclusive, except I have three stories that I want your opinions on. The first one, 2017, in the Gloucestershire farm, there was a sheep attack where the farmer just suspected it had big cat involvements after he found the skull had indentations that he sent off to a university, and they said that it could potentially match the molar or premolar of a big cat. Thoughts? What do you reckon? Real or no real?
Real or no real? I want to see the skull. I want to see those indentation marks myself, because
And it's potentially as well, I should say, was what the expert said.
this is the thing, right? What did you say? This was 2017.
2017 in Gloucestershire.
So one case of potential hunting of a big cat. I think this is where I'm not saying that we couldn't have bigger predators in our landscape.
But you're still on the fence, right?
I'm not.
Oh, you're
look,
slightly off the fence rather than on it. You're leaning towards it's
I'm off
probably
the
not
fence.
true. Okay,
I think
Steve?
I want data.
I'm off the
I want
fence as
evidence.
well.
Okay, Steve's off the fence. Next situation. Same farmer,
Oh,
2022, another sheep attack next to a large wall, quote, that somebody could have jumped down, in his opinion. But this time he found black hair on the barbed wire fence, which was sent off to a forensic lab and analysed using mitochondrial DNA methods to ascertain 99.9% match that it was a Panthera pardus, so matched to a leopard species, 99.9%. Thoughts?
yeah, I'm still off the fence.
Well, I mean, that end bit kind of says it, really. You know, whenever we talk about anything to do with whether there are populations of big cats living here in the UK, my response is, if there are, then we would know about it, because there are absolute ways that science can determine whether there are cats around.
But we have big cats in captivity.
Exactly, and somebody could have pinched some fur.
We have people who, like the same farmer, who have plots and plans to put hair and little things to get everyone excited about big cats.
True, but so earlier this year, 4 lynx were released in the Cairngorms National Park. They were all found relatively quickly. They were all brought in. One of them, unfortunately, died. Everywhere that I have been where you study cats, and even where you study them where there are very, very few. Like, we spent 6 weeks in Bhutan tracking tigers, knowing we were never going to find tigers, but you find their droppings in varying degrees of decay. You can study them. You can get enough DNA from the droppings to figure out how many animals are there. You can use camera traps to find out how many are there. Working in northern Scandinavia with lynx, of which there are very, very few, we were finding signs of them every day. Are there occasionally cats that get released into the British countryside, from private collections, by people with, nefarious intentions, by mistake. Yes, absolutely, they are well known. Those animals have been found and they have been processed. Are there cat populations living unknown, unseen in the UK? No, there aren't. And if there were, then we would absolutely know about it.
Okay, so Steve's got a decision. Lizzie's saying it's fakery. I got one last thing for you. October 2023, in the Cumbrian Lake District, Sharon Larkin Snowdon came across a sheep carcass and saw a big black cat, which she initially thought was a German Shepherd dog, but realised it was a cat with tail, running away and jumping over a stone wall. Now, this is a little bit interesting because this is the first time this has happened, but swabs were taken from the carcass and sent off to a laboratory at the University of Warwick run by Professor Robin Allaby, who confirmed that these swabs included DNA from a big cat in the Panthera genus, probably a leopard. And he says he's now a convert because he was also on the fence in the end. But now he's like, well, there's definitely big cats there because I've just found the DNA.
So I got sent last year a video of a big black cat, probably a leopard, that had been hunting in Dartmoor. And I looked at it and went, that's just an absolutely normal sized domestic cat. I don't know what you're thinking,
It's
but
a
people
Bengal.
look at stuff and go, oh my gosh, it's a leopard. It's definitely a leopard. And
Yep.
the possibility that you could have a leopard living for many years in somewhere like Snowdonia and no one noticing, no chance. They have to kill every
No.
2 or 3 days. It would be
Yeah.
happening all the time. We'd be seeing their footprints all the time. There would be camera trap imagery. There would be hair. It wouldn't be a one-off here, a one-off there. Those absolutely might come from cats, but those cats have been let out or escaped and then been recaptured or died.
I'd love to add on to that because I did an expedition literally framed around collecting environmental DNA, also known as eDNA. So essentially DNA that's in the natural environment, same as what you're suggesting, Sarah, obviously a bit more isolated if you're looking on carcasses and things. But we went into the Peruvian Amazon into a small tributary that was no wider than this table that I'm sat in front of. And we found Orcanus orca in this tributary. DNA of orca. So this is a scientific expedition. We're collecting genuine DNA, and somehow orca DNA has got into this sample in the middle of Peru.
What?
So even though DNA is used as a really valuable tool to learn about the environment, you have to factor in that there are going to be, challenges even within these really complex landscapes. And I think, Steve, you're bang on. There have been big cats, but we in the UK, especially being such a small place with so many people out and about in this countryside, there's no way that we've got thriving leopard populations.
It's a cracking idea, though.
We say we know more about the surface of the moon than we do the Lake District. Haven't you heard that?
That is my favourite line ever.
Did you just come up with that right now?
Some of us are blessed with a bit of wit here and there. Maybe not huge tours, Steve, but
No, I like it. I think it's one of the best things about what we do for a living and our area of interest. It might seem niche to some people. It might seem, like we're kind of nerds studying, I don't know, teeny tiny insects or big cats. But the fascinating thing about what we do is that it is so vast and that there remain so many mysteries, and those mysteries are out there to be solved, and many of them can be solved by you or I. And ever more so, we're starting to solve mysteries just using our phones, just happening to be in the right place at the right time to record something on our phones that could be a completely new discovery. And everyone that's listening to this needs to know that your fascination with the natural world could be a gateway to a whole life of exploration. And there's no reason why, even if you are not the greatest professor, even if you haven't got, endless letters after your name, a fabulous discovery in natural history could absolutely be yours. And there have been so many things, even with comparatively common or what we might consider to be well-known species, that have been giant mysteries of the past that we are now starting to unveil. One that springs to mind is, being down here in Cornwall right now, basking sharks have always rocked up off our shores in the summers and then vaporized, then completely disappeared.
Mhm.
And in the past, every single idea, from them going to the bottom of the sea and hibernating, to them journeying vast distances to the tropics or dropping down into oceanic trenches. Every single one of those has been suggested. But it's not been until the last few years recently that people have started to realise that basking sharks can be a couple of meters below the surface. And if the copepod layer, if the plankton are not right there at the surface, then you won't see them. So
Yeah.
it might be as simple as they just drop down a little bit deeper in the winter. That's
Have you
it.
seen
Bosh,
those
bang.
huge aggregations of them in Ireland, Steve?
Oh,
Yeah. Oh my God. I haven't
beautiful.
seen them in person, but gosh, I'd love to.
Can we do like a podcast trip to go and see buskers doing their spiraling mating?
Field trip.
Yeah. My one caveat to that is that the basking shark is my nemesis. I have
Oh.
seen many throughout my life, and every time I've been with a camera crew, I have absolutely dismally failed. They are the one
No.
animal that just never works for me. So I'm not going, because my presence there would guarantee you will not see basking sharks.
Mine's the giant squid, guys. So, we all have our nemesis. Right, that's all we got time for today. Remember, you will have a very special Q&A episode coming your way on Friday. So remember to send your questions to questions@that'sjustwild.com and we'll get to it.
That's Just Wild is an original Fresh Air production. The producers are Eva Higginbotham and Emma Crampton. Your support makes a huge difference. Please follow us on the podcast app of your choice and leave us a quick review. We'd be so grateful. And for ad-free listening, our newsletter and special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com. Remember, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find us at That's Just Wild Pod.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.